with my learners series in making homemade cheese, in which case I'm the learner. I have to keep emphasizing here that these are beginners for me as well as anybody that's watching if you've never made cheese before. This will be the sixth kind of cheese, I guess, that I've made. The previous 5 videos have already been released. This one is going to be Feta. I was going to move on and make my first hard cheese, probably Gouda, and I have a Dutch cheese press, a wooden cheese press. I say Dutch, they call it a Dutch cheese press. I paid for it in British pounds, thinking it was coming out of England, and it was shipped to me out of Lithuania. Anyway, there's nothing wrong with it. It's exactly as advertised. You need weights to hang on the arm of the thing to get the different weights. You'll see more of that when I eventually do a video using it. I thought I'd be able to suspend like these big gallon milk jugs from it and use those as weights with water in them, varying amounts of water. And it isn't possible. The milk jug is almost grounds out before it starts to put any pressure on what would be the cheese in the mold. So that will come in a future video once I figure out what I'm going to use for weights. This cheese, as I said, is Feta, and I'm doing a few things different. I've been watching a lot of cheese making videos on YouTube. This is a canner, as you can see. Not a pressure canner, just the old enamel canner with some water in it, and in the bottom of it is the rack that you would put the bottles in if you were canning, and it's upside down, and the idea being that it will support the stainless steel container that you're going to put your milk in, which is going to float now until I get milk in it. This is a new stainless steel container, by the way. This recipe calls for 2 gallons of milk, so I needed a larger container. Long story there too, maybe I'll tell you as I go along here. Anyway, the recipe is 2 gallons of milk, and I'm actually using gallons because this milk I bought over in Maine in the US, so it's 2 US gallons. Previous recipes that I have followed and used the metric, instead of a gallon, I used 4 liters, worked fine, so I think it probably would with this as well, but can't guarantee that, I guess. The first phase here is to raise the temperature of the milk to 93 degrees Fahrenheit there. Okay, it just bottomed out, which is good, before the water came up over the edge. I don't think I actually have to bring that water outside of it to a boil. Just getting it so that it will raise the temperature of the milk to 93 will be sufficient. But the reason for using the water bath makes it so much easier to maintain the temperature, and no danger of burning it on the bottom because it's never going to get it above, well, I'm back into Celsius here. It's never going to get above 100 degrees Celsius, the temperature of boiling water, 212 Fahrenheit, I think. But as I say, I won't bring it up that way. Right now it's just tepid. I will stir this until it gets to 93, and then I can remove it from the water bath, and if I need to raise the temperature a bit again, I can put it back in it. Hopefully all that made sense. Right now the temperature is about 42 degrees Fahrenheit, so I've got a ways to go. I will come back once I get it to 93 degrees. The temperature is still rising. It's about 55 degrees Fahrenheit there now, and I'm adding 1/4 teaspoon of calcium chloride mixed in 1/4 cup of dechlorinated water. Mine doesn't have to be dechlorinated because it comes direct from my well, so for me is well water. You could either use bottled water or dechlorinate your household water if it comes from a chlorinated source. So that's the calcium chloride added. We'll come back when it reaches 93 degrees. Well, I really like the hot water bath idea. It was much easier to watch the temperature rising, very gradual. Didn't get it above where it's supposed to be. Once it reached 93, I took it out of the hot water bath, and I'll put it back if it needs to be increased a bit later on. What I'm adding now is the culture, and the recipe is from the New England cheese making company, and this is what they call their culture C21, which is their buttermilk culture. I haven't gone online to check to see if that would be a mesophilic or thermophilic or what. Mesophilic, I think, but if you were using one of those powders, you wouldn't use as much as is in this. This has got some sort of a base that it's mixed with, probably powdered milk or something. Anyway, you just distributed it over the top, let it rehydrate. Seems to be an unending package here. I guess that's it. You let it rehydrate for a couple of minutes, and then you mix it in, and then it would be covered for an hour, just to let it mature and start to ripen with the culture in there. So I will stir it in thoroughly in a minute or two, and then cover it for an hour, and we'll be back in an hour's time. In an hour, and the temperature of the milk dropped a little over a degree. So I put it back in the hot water bath and brought it back up to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. And now the thing to do is to add the rennet. A quarter teaspoon of a single strength rennet mixed into a quarter of a cup of, once again, dechlorinated, or in my case tap water out of the well. Stir this in for a minute. I don't think I've mentioned that what I'm using is whole milk. And commercially purchased whole milk isn't really whole milk. It's 3.5% butter fat. It's a standardized product. This is what the recipe calls for. I don't know if it would work well with a reduced fat milk or not. I know you can buy reduced fat Feta cheese, but didn't want to have a reason for it to fail, so I'm using whole milk. Now it's thoroughly mixed in, and in this person's videos that I followed, they stopped the motion of the milk by putting the ladle in like this for a short period of time. It stops the milk from swirling so much. And evidently that gives you a more uniform curd. So, having done that, I will cover it again. And now it rests for 40 minutes. 40 minutes later, and we have a curd set here. I guess you can see that. And the next process is to cut the curd. And you first cut in a checkerboard pattern. I will cut half inch this time. I checked. Last time it was an inch and I cut half inch, but this particular recipe is half inch again. I'll continue cutting all the way across this way in this direction, and then I will turn the knife and cut this way so that you have a checkerboard of roughly half inch squares, and I'll bring you back at that point when I have reached there, I guess. You can probably hear the gas burner, which for some reason is making a lot of noise today. I'm reheating the water in the canner because I'll probably need it shortly. Well, hopefully you can see the checkerboard pattern there. And now you break the curds on the horizontal using a ladle, the cheese ladle, at roughly half inch depths. It isn't that critical because the next process will be stirring it, if I can speak here, for 30 minutes, and during that process, if any large ones come up, you can cut them with the ladle. It's a firmer curd than I thought it would be, because even with a gallon recipes that I've been doing, you use a quarter of a teaspoon of rennet. And some of the other 2-gallon hard cheese recipes, you use half teaspoon. Of course, this is not considered a hard cheese. It isn't really pressed. It'll be under some weight. It isn't really a pressed cheese, but it only called for a quarter of a teaspoon, and I wondered if that was a misprint. I went and checked online, and no. It says the same thing online. A quarter of a teaspoon. And it obviously, a quarter of a teaspoon will really coagulate two gallons of milk. So I guess you must get a really firm curd if you use a half teaspoon. Probably going down too slowly here because, as I said, you can break these up in this when you're stirring them around here, which is the next process after I get them broken. Maintaining the temperature at 93 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why I've got the canner heating again in case the temperature should drop. This is, you stir gently for 20 to 30 minutes. As soon as I feel I've got these all broken up here, I'll take the temperature and see whether or not I need to put it in immediately to bring it up a bit. It's been about 45 minutes or so, so probably it is down a degree or two. I think I've hit the bottom, or close to it. This pot is so much larger than the one that I was using previously that it's hard to calculate where I'm at. A nice pot. I got this one from Costco. I ordered one through Amazon, Canadian Amazon. Not through Amazon themselves, but an Amazon seller. And a few days later they sent me information saying it had been shipped. I waited the better part of 2 weeks. It didn't arrive. So I sent an email to them and just requested to know where it was shipped from. The tracker that they sent me, kept saying that it was on its way. And it got to the point where it reached the delivery date and it wasn't here. So when I sent them an email, I got this reply, because these people are aware that Amazon can also see the comments. I'm starting the stirring now, gently for 20 to 30 minutes. Amazon also gets a copy of the comments that you send to any of their suppliers. And they said that there was a problem, not available or whatever, and it would be shipped to arrive sometime in early February, or I could cancel the order. So I went immediately and ordered one from Costco and told them to cancel the order. The next day, I get another message from them saying they had discovered they could ship it the following day if I didn't want to cancel the order, and I just replied that, no, I've already ordered from another supplier, don't have any use for 2 of them, please cancel the order. And they did. They canceled the order and I got a full refund. I can still go online with the original tracker that they provided me, and it shows that original package still en route, and it says it was due to be delivered to me on the 16th of January, and today is the 20th, I think. So somehow they're able to provide you with a fraudulent tracking instrument. It doesn't say who the shipper is. It just shows you this tracker that it's making all this progress, getting closer to you, when actually they have never shipped you anything. Well, I'm going to continue stirring for, I think, 30 minutes I will do, and I'll bring you back at the end of that time. Well, I have been gently stirring now for half an hour. Curds have got much smaller. I had to reheat once to bring it back up to 93 degrees. Show you the curds here. They're a lot smaller. And the thing to do now is to let it rest, settle for 10 minutes. So I'll be back in 10 minutes time. The curd has settled for 10 minutes, and now you remove the whey, or most of the whey, and I'm doing it through a strainer, hopefully to retain any curd that I lose. Also, I'm planning to save the whey this time. In my previous cheese efforts here, I've discarded the whey. This time I would like to try to make a whey bread. I've never had that, but I've seen several recipes and comments about it, so well, I think I'm just about as far as I can go without losing most of the curds. I'll bring you back in a second when it's time to fill the molds. I'm using these basket molds again. I'm not sure. I only own 3 of them. I've got them all out, but I doubt if there'll be enough curd to do more than 2, but we'll see here. And it isn't completely necessary, I guess, to use weight on these. It suggests a pound, and I'll show you what I'm going to do to accomplish a pound on here, I guess. I'll turn that around, or have it dumped back into the sink here. I will get 2 out of it. Not weighing them, but I'll try to even it out so that roughly the same amount in each one. Oops. Missed the mark for some of it there. Well, it might be easy to get the last of that with the strainer, so I will come back when I'm ready to move to the next phase here. Since it's only 2 molds, they will fit into this same food grade quality plastic food container that I used to make the triple creme. It's been cleaned and sanitized, so hopefully there's none of that mold left. Now, you don't have to use a follower. I have found these little, again, same things. This is made out of food grade quality, these lids. And it said you could put up to a pound of pressure on them. So these are mason jars with a little bit of water in them to bring the weight of each jar up to a pound. And this now will set for 8 hours at a room temperature of 68 degrees, which I don't keep my house at 68 degrees. The main part that I live in the wintertime, I keep it at 17 Celsius. That's roughly 68 Fahrenheit. So these will be going upstairs into the what I call the grow room, which is at 68 because I'm growing some things under lights in there already. In the first 2 hours, it says to flip them frequently. Take the cheese out of the mold, flip it, and put it back in the mold. What frequently is, I don't know. I'm going to do it every 30 minutes. So I'll bring you back in 30 minutes time when we flip for the first time. But right now these are going in a 68 degree room. Well, the first 30 minutes have passed. I left the mason jars upstairs rather than risk dropping them down the stairs. I want to show you how much whey is in here. I'm wearing my sanitized cheese making gloves here. I sanitized them with the same, I bought a sanitizing liquid that's used for dairy equipment, and I sanitized everything with it, including the gloves. I don't know if I actually showed you what that's how much whey has come out in the first 30 minutes. And as you can see, the curd has settled quite a bit. To get it flipped over. Here we go. Oh, it feels warm still. Warm to the touch. Back for another 30 minutes. I may wait until, well, the next one in an hour's time, a couple of times further on, before I bother to show you me flipping cheeses again, but they're going back up into the warm room with the pound weight on them for another 30 minutes now. They've had a full 6 hours now, altogether 8 hours, and they are formed as much as they're ever going to be formed, I guess. Not very much whey. I don't know, a third of a cup or so, I would guess. I'm just going to rinse this out. Next phase, they are cut and drained, and that takes about 12 hours. But, I'm going to weigh them first. You're supposed to cut them into pieces roughly half a pound each. So I'm not at all sure what they weigh. Bring in the scales here, I guess. Okay. I believe that is set on ounces. That one weighs 23 ounces, 23.15 ounces. And that's 23.8, so they weigh roughly the same thing, a little over 23 ounces each. So, I could do some math and some cutting here, I guess, to determine half. 8 ounces is half pound, so into thirds, I guess, roughly. You know, if it was 24 ounces, it would be thirds would be half pound each. So I will cut them and come back in a few minutes. Some of my thirds are a bit bigger than others. They're not off by an ounce. Some of them are right on 8 ounces, and some are closer to 7 ounces, but anyway, that's as good as it's going to get, I guess. And now they are cut and drained, isn't it? They've been cut, so this is a draining process. You sprinkle just lightly with salt on the top of them. Not a lot of salt. I'm putting a pinch on each one of the cheeses here, so divided among the 3 pieces. Now they go back in that room at 68 degrees and covered with the cheesecloth for, it says 6 to 12 hours. I'm going to do the 12 hours or close to 12 hours. It's now 9:15 in the evening, so I will leave them until I get up tomorrow morning to go on with the next stage, which is salting them. I just sprinkled a little salt, but the next stage is brining them in a liquid brine. So we'll be back in 12 hours. Well, there are two brines involved in making feta. The first one is a very strong brine, and the cheese stays in it for 4 hours. And it has, before you put the cheese in it, it has to cool down to 60 degrees, below room temperature even. So you begin by boiling a gallon of water. Mine's just, again, ordinary tap water. And that has been to a boil, and I shut it off a little while ago. 2 pounds of salt. Not exactly a low sodium cheese, is it? And the salt that I'm using is non-iodized. You could use either kosher salt or non-iodized sea salt. And what I'm actually using is a pickling salt. You use it to pickle your pickles, so to speak. I guess the salting phase with pickles, but it doesn't have any iodine. It's just straight salt. Hopefully it will all dissolve in that much water, one way or the other. That's all you put in there. So now I try a tablespoon of calcium chloride, and this bottle is never very easy to, well, I guess I can get it out of there easier than I thought. It's a very solid squeezy bottle that they put the calcium chloride in. Never used a tablespoon in anything. It's usually a quarter of a teaspoon goes into most of the cheeses. Here's 1 tablespoon of calcium chloride. And a tablespoon of white vinegar. That is the entire recipe for the first brine. The second brine, which I will make, well, I guess it'd be a few days from now, the process as it continues here. But the second brine is the one that you store it in, and it has much less salt. And in case I forget to say it at some point later on, I saw somewhere on the internet, I don't think it's in this recipe, I'm going to put the link once again to this recipe down below this video. But, on the internet somewhere, I saw that if your cheese has been stored for a long period of time and is very salty, a way to remove some of the salt is to take the cheese that you're taking out to use, the piece of cheese that you're going to be using, and soak it in milk, and that will leach out quite a bit of the salt. And of course, cheese was a method of preserving milk, and feta cheese with this much salt and whatever, I think it literally could be preserved for years. Anyway, that is it. That's the brine made. I'll cover this and let it cool overnight and come back to it all in the morning. Well, it's been about 11 hours, I guess, rather than 12, but it did say 6 to 12 hours. And I'll show you the amount of whey once I get these all in the brine. I've got it cooled to 60 degrees, and that's a food grade plastic container that I'm putting it in. Another story involved with the food grade plastic container. Ordered on Amazon, the Canadian Amazon. It comes supposedly with a lid. I ordered both. the lid and the container. The container came quickly from the Canadian side. The lid is being shipped to me from the US, and it has been 2 weeks. In an argument with the owner, they're claiming that they shipped it on the 15th. But they finally the 15th. They finally provided me with shipping information, which proves that they only shipped it on the 20th. But anyway, it'll get here eventually. But it amazes me that the company that sells the container doesn't also have the lid that goes with it. But I don't need a lid for it right now, I guess. Anyway, 4 hours they sit in here. I don't know. I'm curious as to whether... Well, I know the purpose of salt, of course, is to help preserve the cheese, but I'm curious as to whether it will change the texture of the cheese. I'm thinking that it will probably leach out a lot of the whey that's still in the cheese. Salt will draw that out and the cheese will be firmer, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, this is the amount of whey that came out overnight. I don't know, close to half a cup or so, I guess. So 4 hours from now, we come back with the next step. They have been in the brine for 4 hours, and now they are on mats, cheese mats, and they will be drying for 1 to 3 days until they're dry. I don't have any idea how long that will take. At a temperature between 48 and 56 degrees. Well, mine are going in the cheese fridge here, and I've been regulating the cheese fridge for a couple of days now, and it is cycling between 50 and 54 degrees, so that's in a good range. And I don't know how long it'll take them to dry. This is not a frost-free refrigerator. If it was a frost-free refrigerator in 3 days' time, they would be all shriveled up. But they will dry off. And during the time that they're drying, you turn them several times a day. So every so many hours, I will open the fridge up and turn each piece of cheese. So that is the process as of now anyway, and when they're dry we'll carry on with this. Well, it turns out with feta cheese you dry it for 3 days so you can get it wet again. My cheese has been cut up and has been drying, turned frequently in the cheese refrigerator, and this is called a storage brine that it's in now. 3 quarts of water, 6 ounces of salt, so nowhere as near as salt as the first brine was that they were in for 4 hours. But something interesting, after drying them and that original brining, they no longer float. I think that's also because of the amount of salt. There's much less salt. If there was more salt, they would float. That's one of the ways around here. When they used to salt fish, I say used to, there aren't any fish left to salt anymore, but they used to salt cod and pollock and dry them. And the way that they knew that the pickle that they were putting them in was strong enough is they would put a potato in it. And if the potato floated, then there was enough salt. If the potato didn't float, you added more salt until the potato floated to the surface. So I'm thinking that's what's happening here. There's not that much difference in the cheese. It's the amount of salt that's in the liquid. Now it is stored between 48 and 50 degrees for a month. And I've discovered that my basement is the place for it, I guess. I have some shelving down there, and I've had a thermometer on the shelving, and it's just about perfect temperature for it, so that's where it's going to go. At the end of a month, I'll be trying some, so that will be the end of this video. I actually, before this started drying, I took a little slice off of one. It doesn't have a great deal of flavor, but it was okay. And then you can put it in the cheese refrigerator, and it gives you a temperature range, I forget, but it's about the same range that I'm using to ripen cheeses in the cheese refrigerator. And keep it for a year or longer, it says, as long as it stays in the brine. So we will try it in a month's time and see what it's like. Well, the feta has been in the brine for a month, and I guess it was actually yesterday that I started trying it, eating it for the first time, and I found it very salt, which I feta would be. I guess you see all the salt that we used in making this. But one of the suggestions, I think it's on the cheesemaking.com website, and there will be a link down below to the process that I followed, which is their process, said to, if you found it too salt, to put it in milk, the piece that you're going to use, put it in milk for half a day or whatever. Well, I did that last evening, and that's probably about 12 hours ago now that I did that, and it works very well. I mean, there's definitely still salt in feta, but it no longer has that briny flavor to it, so I've been enjoying it. Now, I will make this, I guess I would call this a qualified success. That's definitely feta, and I can definitely use it. One of the things that I'm still maintaining I didn't do it wrong. I followed the instructions, but you'll notice back in the video where I was sprinkling salt on the cheese that was, for it to dry before it went into the heavy brine. I followed the instructions. It said to sprinkle. And when I had finished the heavy brining and the drying process and whatever, and was putting it in the storage brine, a few days later I noticed that the brine was becoming very cloudy, almost like milk. And I sent an email off to the cheesemaking.com company, and their solution was that this was because the cheese was not stabilized with dry salting before going into the storage brine. And evidently, where it said in the instructions to sprinkle, you should actually rub salt lightly on all, top, bottom, and sides of each piece of cheese. Because if you don't, it will cause the brine to leach calcium out of the cheese, and that's why I got a very milky looking brine. And a month later, when I took pieces out yesterday and again today, the surface of each piece had maybe 1/4 of an inch of very soft cheese or curd or whatever that I rinsed off under the tap. The cheese is still very usable. It's quite tasty, so I got cheese out of it, just not the perfect method, I guess. So if you're going to be trying this yourself, I would recommend that you, when it comes to that particular stage, you don't just sprinkle salt, you lightly salt all surfaces and sort of rub it in, and that should eliminate the problem, I guess, that I had. But for my first feta, I'm pleased with it, and I'm sure it will be used in salads and spanakopita and all that wonderful stuff. Well, thank you very much for watching.